that song doesn't get you pumped up, I don't know what does. We're here today to talk strategy and answer your questions about the Austrian Grand Prix. And we're excited to be back. Ryan is with us today, but he is ill. And that just shows the dedication we have to being live here with y'all every single race of the Formula One season. Before we get into it, some quick introductions. If by chance it is your first time here, my name is Ross. I'm the founder and CEO of GridRival. With me today, I have Michael Ursinoli, our CTO, William Laddie, Principal Software Engineer here at GridRival, and Ryan Booth, Director of Business Operations. And also, if you haven't liked and subscribed to our channel, make sure to do that so you get future updates about future shows. Find us on Discord if you haven't. If you're not on our Discord, highly recommend checking that out. There's over, I think there's almost, 7,000 people in there now?
Somewhere around there.
If you really want to dive deep into strategy, if you're losing in your league, there's a lot of great resources in the Discord to ask questions. And we also have the paddock within GridRival app itself. It's a good spot to go for strategy questions as well. Let's get into it. We got Austria coming up. Max Verstappen's won here 4 out of the last 7 events. Bets on whether or not that's going to continue. My guess would be no. I think it was Russell last year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the podium was Russell, Piastri, Sainz, who was driving for Ferrari back then.
Yeah, I think a Verstappen first place. I wouldn't bet on it. I'll say that. Quick recap of the last event. Canadian GP. We had, what do we got?
It finally happened.
Finally did.
The
Apply rules.
The McLaren's getting into it. It finally happened. That was the big thing from Canada.
We had exactly 10 drivers go up in value, 10 drivers go down. Antonelli, Alonso, and Hulkenberg, the biggest benefactors of that race, up $2 million each. Ocon up 1.6. I don't feel like we've said that many times this season, have we? Esteban Ocon almost up 2 million. Ollie Behrman up 1.6. Russell and Colapinto up 1.4. Bortoletto 800K, and then Verstappen and Sainz both up $500,000. On the losing side, DNFs from Lawson and Albon, so they dropped the full 2 million. Isaac Hadjar, it was bound to happen. I mean, after what was it, 8 or 9 races in a row of going up in value, dropped 2 million, finished 16th. An incredible run. I actually think, I can't verify this right this second, I think Isaac Hadjar's salary climb run was the longest potentially in GridRival's history. I can say that I would say I'm 80% confident.
They were bound to have a bad day.
Yeah.
The other big loser, of course, Lando Norris, who didn't quite finish the race. He finished up, but he was classified, so his penalty doesn't carry over to the next race. But he did run into his teammate. He broke the first rule of racing, and he's also down 2 million. And McLaren's the big loser on the constructor side for the same reason.
Yes, they are.
And VCARB.
Not in
that
salary
too.
though.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to in a sec. Let's see. We got Lando Norris down 2 million as well. Gasly 1.8. Leclerc down 1. Stroller coaster down 600K. Man, just the stroller coaster is at the bottom. He's been at the bottom for a while. The stroller coaster might be flat at this point. The roller coaster, the ride may be over. We'll see. Hamilton down $500,000. Piastri 300K. Tsunoda 200K. On the constructor side, as Michael alluded, VCARB. If you had VCARB on your team, constructors can go up or down a maximum of 3 million, but you don't see it that often. VCARB lost the full amount. So down 3 million is a brutal pill to swallow if you had them on your team. Williams down 1.7, Alpine down $500,000. But the other 7 teams all went up in value. Mercedes 2 million, Haas 1.8, Aston Martin 1.8, Red Bull up 900K, Sauber 600K, Ferrari. Why is McLaren's at the top? I didn't see it. Okay, down 2.1, so I missed them. Any commentary on salary fluctuation before we get into our tiers going into Austria?
we've got some bargains,
Yeah, some
and
bargains.
those are papaya bargains.
And
It's rare. It's rare.
and also
The other thing,
William.
yeah, the other thing worth noting on the V carb side, Lawson did end up taking a power unit penalty, so he'd started last. I think that they'd basically written off the weekends. We'll see if they look stronger this week, but they're another potential huge bargain if they don't have repeat of Canada.
Yeah, I would. Oh, go ahead. I was going to say in the top 10 drivers, you have three that went down that dropped $2 million. So to William's point, that's not something we see very frequently.
It's also ridiculous that the talent driver tier.
That's what I was going to say this whole time.
Also want to call out Albon losing a Mercedes engine. This seems to continue to be a thing where Mercedes is having a few more retirements than the other manufacturers. And it hasn't bitten McLaren's yet, but who knows?
Let's get into our tiers. Now, unfortunately, Ryan...
I got tier names. We're good.
Oh, we got tier names.
I had to do them pretty quickly. It's been a little bit of a crazy morning.
So tier 1, we have Piastri, Verstappen, Norris, and Russell. Ryan, why don't you hit us with the tier name for tier 1?
This is the Nakatomi Plaza tier. This was the big three forever and ever and ever, and now George Russell is here. So, as John McClane famously said, "Welcome to the party, pal." So now we've got 4 up here at the top Nakatomi Plaza tier.
There you go. Okay, so who do we love here? If we're just let's start with maybe who of this tier we're maybe not picking. Russell up 1.4 after last race. He's tied with Lando Norris. So is there a scenario in which you could recommend picking Russell over Norris at this point?
Sure. Russell's been consistent, Mr. Consistency, and Norris has been a little hit and miss, but he's unfortunate with a $2 million drop. That I don't think we were expecting that. It was bound to happen. But I think the safest play is still going to be Norris for equipment plus talent. But if you have Russell, I'm not dropping Russell for anyone above him right now either. I think he's definitely at the ceiling. But at this point in the season, getting towards close to the halfway point, this tier is going to kind of steady out, right? And there's not going to be much value gains unless you chase like a Norris dropping 2 million. If he has a good return to form, there could be a positive $2 million growth there. So like that's something to consider. There's a really good chance of points, strong points from Norris, as well as some value gain. Whereas like Piastri, very, very close to the ceiling, unlikely to get you that same value increase.
Yeah, well said. Also, food for thought. George Russell, according to my spreadsheet here, first place in Canada, first place last year. So just something to throw out there. Ryan, William, any thoughts? Norris versus Russell?
It's only Norris for me. I mean, Russell's been awesome all season, but if I can get Norris and Russell at the same price, I'm going to take Norris every single time. Also, I think it's supposed to be scorching hot in Austria this weekend, which I don't know how well it's going to jive with the Mercedes. We'll see.
Yeah, Heat and Mercedes usually haven't mixed too well. When I say Mercedes, I mean the Mercedes factory team, of course. Norris is definitely the better bargain unless we get a surprise in practice tomorrow. And it is worth noting that Norris won't be in first practice. Alex Dunn's going to fill in for him with the required young driver session. Leclerc also getting replaced by Bogdanovich, I think is how you say his name. So just a note there that they'll have a little bit less practice time, but they're both pretty experienced drivers. If Mercedes unloads well tomorrow, we can take a chance on them. Maybe Mercedes is finding something. Norris, I think, is still the favorite unless we hear otherwise. I think of this tier, Verstappen is probably the one that's scariest. They're coming with upgrades, supposedly, but sounds like they're also pretty close to calling a cap on the 2025 development, which kind of makes sense. The constructors' standings, the constructors' championship is a distant memory, and honestly, the drivers' championship is all but gone at this point for them, unless McLaren really stumbles down the stretch. So yeah, Norris best, Piastri also good, pricier. Then I think Russell might be the better choice if Mercedes is still looking promising this weekend.
Yeah, I feel like in hunting for value, I actually do think Lando and Russell to me in this tier are the biggest standouts. They both have basically it's 156 and 157 race average, or sorry, season average fantasy points per race. Verstappen's slightly higher, but you're going to pay for it. It's another $1 million. Piastri another million above that for an average of 9 points more, 8 points more per event. Any final thoughts on this tier?
All four are very rosterable. If I have one, I'm not paying a drop fee at this point. But it's hard to go wrong up here. And I think, as we all kind of touched on, Norris probably the best call.
Okay, next tier, only 2 drivers, both Ferrari drivers. Can you guys guess who they might be?
Carlos Sainz.
Tino Bogdanovich and I don't know.
We got Leclerc and Hamilton together in tier 2. Hamilton at 22.7 million, Leclerc at 25.9. Ryan, hit us with the name of this tier.
I mean, this one's just simple. This is the spicy meatball tier. It's just the 2 Ferraris. I didn't really come up with a good one for this one. It gets better later, trust me.
Okay, so we got Leclerc at 25.9, average race points of 140 this season. Hamilton 22.7, average race points of 134. Look, both down after last race. Leclerc a little bit more. I feel like their salaries both very relative to the average points they've earned. I don't know. Do you guys have an opinion here?
A loose one. So for lineups that have like north of $120 million in team value, even $125 million in team value, there's a really good shot you're rostering 2 drivers from the top 7, which might force you just financially into picking one of the Ferrari drivers. If that is you, I would go Lewis Hamilton for 22.7 for the points to value ratio. But if I'm really being honest, this might be a situation where I go expensive driver, expensive constructor, and avoid signing a Ferrari team, signing either of the Ferraris right now. I would change my mind because William pointed out the heat in Austria and the Mercedes team. If Mercedes is really struggling, then Hamilton might be a smart sign, right? If he's able to stay clear of the Mercedes, there's some definite short-term value, but that's a short contract signing. That's a 1 if you're feeling risky, a 2 if you want to hedge it just a little bit. But I'm not signing Ferrari for any longer than that. But my personal recommendation at this point, avoid this tier, sign a driver above and sign a fancy constructor.
Yeah, I have to agree. If I was starting fresh, I don't think I'm picking either of these, just given the discounts there are across the rest of the roster options. Yeah, to your point, I don't think either of these have like a ton of upside either. Even though they both went down in value, like I don't see a lot of reasons. I also can say, I mean, it would depend. It would be very circumstantial based off the rest of my lineup, but I don't know that I would give a strong recommendation to drop either of these either. Especially if, you have a week of a loss left, you want to maybe try and regain that if possible.
This might even be a situation where like it's a trap to spend every dollar you have sometimes. And this might be a case of that. Unless we get a real surprise tomorrow in practice, I'm not interested in either Ferrari in any circumstance. Like I'm more interested in Antonelli if they're still looking okay. If ECAR finds their form again, I like Hadjar. And you have both Williams drivers. Like you might actually get more points out of that tier, especially since improvement points are a thing, which Willie was asking about uh, about Stroll losing value, even though he finished better than qualifying. Well, that's because it's based on fantasy points. Like value changes are based on fantasy points, and fantasy points are based on more than race finish position. So, like we just saw Ferrari fifth and sixth, and they lost value because if we have improvement points, we have overtake points, we have a lot of other things. So, I'm not interested in Ferrari for that reason.
I am interested in Ferrari, but I am struggling a bit with it. I don't like having Ferrari in my corner, but I do think that Mercedes will struggle this weekend, and that's kind of where my Ferrari handicap is based around because I think they just slot in naturally to be right behind the McLarens if the Mercedes struggle. But the problem really is these prices. I wish they had had a really bad couple weeks or something and they were on sale. I don't see them really growing value. I do think Lewis slots into lineups this week pretty well at 22. Probably avoiding Leclerc just because of the price. I'd rather just spend a little extra and get someone from that top tier. But I think I'm going to find a way to get Lewis Hamilton on the roster this weekend.
Mm-hmm. And I would, last thing I'll say, I would personally recommend going that route that Ryan's saying. If you are going for Ferrari, Hamilton, avoid Ferrari as a constructor because Ferrari as a constructor is 25.5. They like slots right in between like Hamilton and Leclerc. Don't get caught in that trap. Go for the points the driver can earn and the value the driver can earn. There's more value upside if Hamilton does well than if Hamilton and Leclerc does well and you have Ferrari as your constructor. So pro tip there.
All right, tier 3. Ryan, do you want to introduce this tier? I got to step away for just a quick sec.
Yep, I got it. So this is Antonelli, Hadjar, Albon, Sainz, Alonso. Top salary is Antonelli at 17.8. Bottom one is Alonso at 15.7. And then this is now we've hit the talent driver cutoff, which it's pretty wild to see all of these guys talent driver eligible. This is the fewest non-talent driver eligible I think we've had all season, maybe ever. I don't recall ever only having this many. But this is the Can I Get My Punk Ass Off the Street tier. From the song Graduate by Third Eye Blind. I think Kimmy just graduated high school. And can any of these guys graduate into talent driver ineligibility? I told you to get better.
You're out of control. Well, I think I think this is probably the most exciting part of like what we were most excited to talk about coming into this call. Cause for the viewers, when we were on the call before this call, this is what we were excited about is Antonelli, Hadjar, Albon, Sainz, Alonso. You even have like Hulkenberg's been on a tear and has been a top talent driver selection. I won't, he's a tier below, so I'm not going to bring that up, but sticking within here, there is so many good choices for talent drivers. So I'm just going to remind everyone, app pro tip, in your league, open up these drivers and look at the league adoption. The league adoption is, for all intents and purposes, live. It updates between 1 and 5 minutes, right? Look at where other people are placing their likely bets on talent driver based on the league adoption stat. Because if everyone's going for one person, which is very unlikely with the amount of talent that we have in this tier right now, you might just want to do that to hedge. Otherwise, good time to also do a contrarian play, right? If you think Sainz is going to beat Albon and Albon has a higher league adoption score, that's something that gets me excited in when we're looking at a lineup like this. Personally, I've got Antonelli on a one race. I have Antonelli with one race left on a contract, so I'm sticking with Antonelli right now. If Mercedes is struggling in practice, I'm still bullish on Hadjar and Albon. I am prepared to pay a drop fee on Antonelli if Mercedes is really struggling with the temperature.
Yeah, right now, like Antonelli looks like he's maybe getting acclimated to the car at last. So if Mercedes has pace, he'll have pace. And contract length, I think, is going to be pretty interesting here. So one race from now, if he has a good day, he's going to move out of talent driver eligibility. 3 rounds from now. So Austria, Great Britain, Belgium, Belgium is a sprint, and we saw Antonelli have a decent sprint at Miami. So, with this essentially one shot Q3 format for the sprint stick, you never know what can happen. And so I may want to have Antonelli available for Spa, like as I'm picking my contract lengths. So, yeah, Antonelli is interesting this week. Maybe less so next week if he has a good day. Beyond that, I think that Williams still has the pace. I know Canada wasn't so great, but there was a mechanical problem. But Sainz was in the points. The wild card is V Carb. Like if they show up and they have pace again, it's not like Canada. You want Hadjar. You want to get back on the Hadjar train. I don't know that he's going to be gaining value hands over fist like he was the first half of the year. But I like
I
Hadjar
would
a
be
lot.
surprised. I mean, I think we said
Welcome back.
we said on probably 3 shows in a row that we thought Hajar was getting close to his ceiling.
And then the other wild card here is Alonso. Aston found something in this last month or so. How close are they to the ceiling? Like Alonso seems to be fighting for points every week. If he can keep that up,
if you're taking Mike's advice on looking at league adoption and trying to be a little bit of a contrarian, Alonso's the play of these. And I'm just looking at the biggest GridRival league. So your league will be very different, right? If you only have 10 players, like this may not be representative, but I think this gives a pretty good representation of like holistically what a large number of players are thinking. Alonso is 18.7%. On the flip side of that, in this tier, Antonelli's at 34%. And then everybody in between those two is pretty close to tied at like 25, 26, 27.
the other thing I'll point out about Sainz and Alonso is that they are both sub 16 million, which means that they are guaranteed to be talent driver eligible at Silverstone. That is not a guarantee for Antonelli, Hadjar, or Albon. There's a very good chance for Hadjar and Albon to remain eligible. It is hard to gain 2 million in 1 week. But yeah, Antonelli, if he has another good week, you're probably not going to get him as talent driver next time out. But that's a possibility for these other guys.
Someone did just ask, is league adoption global or is your own personal league? So it is league specific. So every league, your driver adoption is going to be different in every single league you're in. So it's really helping you understand, right, in a game where we're all picking from the same drivers, but we don't want to disclose, like we don't want strategically, I think it would take a lot of the fun out of the game if you kind of knew what everybody else in your league had on their team. So league adoption is kind of like an indicator of how other people might be thinking.
Yeah, I think.
And does it show the upcoming race or the past race? It is showing right now, like this upcoming race. Like if you make a contract change, that number will update within like 5 or 10 minutes. I forget what the exact number is, but that is essentially live.
Yeah, I think league adoption, I think, becomes very important later in the year when you're trying to figure out where you're going to try and finish in the standings. At this point, I don't look at it too heavily. I'm just trying to put together the best lineups, but I'll probably start looking at that in a couple weeks a little more closely. And then as far as this tier goes, I'm not going to overthink it. I think it's just Antonelli, unless Mercedes does look really bad in practice. I do expect the Williams to bounce back. I like both of those plays, and I'm with Aston and Alonso, I'm currently just monitoring the situation. I'm not going to pay the money to have them on my team. Maybe they have found something, and if I'm sure of that, then I'll look at them next week. But as of now, I'm just leaving them off. I just don't trust Aston Martin.
The other thing Alonso has going for him is that he's driving on a one-car team. So he's going to get some teammate points generally. Just like Max.
Sure.
All right, should we get into our fourth tier?
Let's do it.
Fourth and largest. 6 drivers in this tier. We got Ocon, 13.9, Tsunoda at 13.3, Hulkenberg 13.2, Gasly 11.5, Behrman 11.1, Lawson at 10.7. Lots of volatility in this tier over the last race. Everyone except Tsunoda went up or down at least 1.6 million. So Ryan, what are we calling this tier this week?
This is the 50 feet of crap tier. And Brad Pitt and Moneyball says there's rich teams, there's poor teams, there's 50 feet of crap, and then there's us. This tier is just, it's it's massive. It's all over the place. Like this is crap.
The crap tier.
The crap, 50 feet of crap tier. So good luck figuring it out. Like, I would assume almost every lineup will need at least one guy from this tier, and it's just a matter of who's it going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're gonna have some gems here.
Yeah,
Hulkenberg of this tier has the highest points per race average. Oh, sorry, I'm mistaken. Ocon has 1 point advantage, 117.
I actually feel very bad naming this tier 50 feet of crap that includes Nico Hulkenberg because he deserves all sorts of praise for what he's doing in that car. He has been awesome. So I do feel bad about including him in this tier, but that's just the way the salary's lined up. So I just wanted to say that. Everyone else can be that.
How is Sauber not last anymore? It's amazing.
yeah.
Even Bortoletto's not last.
Yeah. Hulkenberg specifically has been on a tear, right? So
Hulkenberg scoring points in a Sauber.
yeah,
Dude, he deserves after. I mean, he did this. He's done this for the last number of seasons, and it just shocks me that he has not gotten a seat in a faster car with how much he has outpaced the cars that he's been in for the last 5 seasons now.
His whole career is he's most race starts without a race win. I think he's also
without a podium
without a podium even as well.
Like he's stuck with Force India all those years, and then Haas.
Yeah, but Hulkenberg at 13 too. I feel like if you've ridden this wave up, I am one of those people. I have lineups where I've benefited greatly for having Nico just on my lineup for a couple of races. It's still a risky click on the talent driver star, right? Like very few people are signing Nico and also rostering him as the talent driver versus people who are doing Hadjar or Antonelli. But what I like in this tier is Lawson at 10.7. Recent drop of 2 million. The V carb car, the Racing Bulls, the AlphaTauri, the Toro Rosso, whatever we're calling it.
The minority.
The minority is I think can do well for the next couple of races. So I like the value play here at 10.7. He can go down, not by a ton, but he can go up by a lot more. So I like Lawson at 10.7 on something even like potentially a 3-race contract for the sprint, potentially, but probably a 2-race contract and reassess for the sprint.
Yeah, I can really empathize with Lawson. I mean, his Honda conked out. My Honda conked out just a couple weeks ago. I had to take a $200 penalty. So, yeah, hopefully all of our Hondas are going to be running nice and smooth this weekend. And yeah, I think and I hope Canada's the aberration there. And hopefully we're not looking at a power unit penalty for Lawson this coming week. But that is always going to be a variable now. Like if they have a bad qualifying, maybe they decide to take it out of Park for May and shove another power unit in there and just rip off the Band-Aid because they're certainly going to have to take at least a couple more penalties this year, I would think. Given that we still have another half a season to go. But like I think Lawson is probably the move here unless we get another nasty surprise in practice. I kind of like Behrman actually. Like Haas seems to be a team that's like near the points at the very least. Like the whole back of the grid is very jumbled now, and it's going to be a little bit more about driver than car. I think. I think Behrman's on the way up. I think Hulkenberg's near the ceiling.
I think Ryan appropriately named this tier, but I would say it's more of a crapshoot than a crap tier, because I do agree with Lawson, but I feel like the rest of the 5 of them. I mean, you could go any way, and I think it would. I mean, if I was to make $100 million, maybe. I mean, it would depend on the rest of my lineup. I think that's where I would like figure out how I slot in which one of these. But I think if we're deciding between this group, let's take Lawson out of it. Like, it feels like kind of a crapshoot.
If I'm gonna just shoot from the hip,
there's not a clear standout.
I would say it's Lawson, Gasly, Hulkenberg, Behrman, Ocon, Tsunoda. If I just had to shoot from the hip and put it out there, I don't think Tsunoda has any upwards, very, very little upwards trajectory over any sort of long term. I think he's kind of stuck here. But I think Gasly, Lawson definitely have the highest chance of some upward movement, but you could get some surprises from Behrman and or Ocon. But I like Behrman more than Ocon just because of the discount, like 11.1 in the same equipment. Ocon obviously has the skill, but 13.9 for a Haas. Not when I can get an Alpine for 11.5, or a V carb for 10.7. That's how I'm ranking these.
Yeah, these guys have given me a headache pretty much all year. I think I've been with the drivers in this tier, I've been wrong on almost all of them, almost all of the time. I keep getting fooled thinking Gasly's going to break out. He's been horrible. I've been sitting on the sidelines for this entire Hulkenberg meteoric run. I just kept saying, oh, his price is too high. It's like the stock that you didn't buy and all your friends did, and you're just watching them all get rich. So now I feel like he's at the ceiling. I can't do it now. So I think I'm going to stubbornly just keep not using Hulkenberg and look like an idiot every week. I think Lawson's the only guy I'm looking at in this tier. So 5 races, I would do 5-race contract for Lawson. So the way I've been trending on these guys, just probably avoid Lawson because I'm sure I'm wrong. And then William did steal a little bit of my thunder. I do like Behrman oddly this week. So sorry to put the jinx on your guy there, William. But I think Behrman and Haas may be finding something. And I think they're very at a discounted price right now. But the rest of them, I have no interest in Ocon, Tsunoda. And then, as I had said, I'm off the Gasly train. So maybe he'll be good now. And then Hulkenberg, I'm just going to continue to watch him be awesome and cheer for him, but not have him on my team.
Just some commentary. Michael Toaster Boy said Ryan is on fire with a fever. So
yeah, we got some love
there for you, Ryan.
Yeah, the tier that you missed, I think, was one of my better tier names of all time.
Oh, I heard it. Don't worry.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay, last tier, and then maybe we'll get some Q&A if there's any. Ryan, why don't you introduce these? I'm going to hunt for some questions.
All right. Franco Colapinto, Gabriel Bortoleto, and Lance Stroll. Colapinto, the highest salary at 10.1. Lowest is Stroll at 6.1. This is the dip your toe in the water tier with Colapinto and Bortoleto, and then Lance Stroll just fits in as the dumpster at the bottom. He is already sunk to the bottom of whatever body of water this is.
Well, I said it last week, and I'll say it again today. And if you sign Lance Stroll, do not do a 1-race contract unless you're leaving a good amount of money left over in your bank, right? He's the cheapest player in the game. He's the cheapest driver in the game by a decent margin at this point, over $2 million. So if you sign Lance Stroll to a 1-race contract, hoping he's going to pop $2 million, and he doesn't, I can't tell you how many players get caught in the trap where they're locked out of the cheapest driver and they don't have enough money to roster the next cheapest driver. It happens all the time.
Mm-hmm. You want to have somebody else expiring the same week.
Yes. Make sure you have someone else expiring, or you have enough money in the bank that if you get locked at a Stroll, you have a backup plan. Don't take the stroller coaster without a backup plan. But to be said
preferably
is
somebody of
good.
Preferably somebody of value expiring, not like Colapinto or Bortoleto or Alpine or Sauber.
For sure. Yeah. In the play for Stroll is always is someone that we love to talk about. The players love to talk about, and the stroller coaster has great branding. The play here was the same play when it was Bortoleto at 6.1. This is kind of the area where it's the cheapest points to value. If Stroll finishes the race, and even if that means finishing 18th, even if he does go down in value, the points to value is still some of the best that you can get. So like you might lose 500K, 600K, some small amount. He's already down so low. It'd be really hard to lose like $1 million or more at this point. It is possible, but let's not hope for it.
Challenge accepted.
He'll figure out a way. 6.1 million is 6.1 million is very cheap points to value. So don't feel bad about getting on this roller coaster as long as your mindset isn't, I'm going to make $2 million quickly. It is, I'm being extremely capital efficient with points to value strategy. And rant.
and something Lance Stroll is going for him. If this heat is a problem, we might see some DNFs, some reliability issues, and then Lance Stroll, just by virtue of other people not making it, can bring himself to like a P16 finish, which might be his ceiling.
Too bad he drives a Mercedes.
Yeah.
That's true. He could be caught up in that. But I think that a higher risk of DNFs generally benefits the really cheap drivers in the game. You just have to hope you dodge the bullet.
So on this topic, there is a question from Willie. And the question is, who is the safest driver to take a gain of 2 million in one event? Where would you be?
There are no safe plays in the GridRival League.
Yeah.
No, but this is a relative question.
If you make me pick one driver who's going to gain 2 million, it's probably Liam Lawson.
Mhm.
That was going to be my pick.
I'll say Lance Stroll.
I would say Stroll's honestly not a bad choice, only because he's so low.
Yeah.
I mean, he is now. It says 6.1. Is that?
Yeah, if he's going to do better, then if he's going to gain 2 million, like finishing the race probably won't be enough. Like he
so he's
finished Canada,
officially.
he was the last car.
Oh, he's
was the
officially
last
the
car
lowest.
running.
He's officially the lowest he's ever been. So he started the season at 6.2, and then kind of hovered. He went up in the 8s, 7s. He's now down to 6.1. So he's the lowest he's ever been. We have the salary formula math. We give you guys. It's in the app. You can see it. You can run the model yourself. But my gut is that like he probably only needs to finish
Fantasy points 6. No, he
15th?
will 16th to gain value, but like in order to go up 2 million, I gotta run the math. But you're looking at fantasy points like 13th or 14th, probably 13th to get 2 million. It's still like to gain 2 million on Stroll has to have a really good performance. It's not just finishing 18th and there's 2 DNFs behind him. Like he has to actually finish getting up towards the solid part of the midfield, you know, in the race itself.
That or Norris could do his best impression of Alex Dunn at Monaco and just pile up half the field on the first lap.
There you go.
That's
That
the
is
other
an
way.
option.
That's less likely though.
Yeah. I mean, there's also a chance he qualifies a little better than we think. Austria, we have so many laps that get thrown out for exceeding track limits and qualifying. Sometimes you see some people stuck at the back because they don't get a banker lap in. So maybe Lance Stroll keeps it on the track. I don't know. Maybe it's a shtick or a gimmick. I don't know why I like Lance Stroll so much this week, but I'm just going with it.
Yeah. All right. I looked at our numbers again. I'll throw a curveball I'll answer this in a curveball answer. If you need to make $2 million very quick, the best way is actually probably having VCarb as your constructor. So it's not a driver, but if you sign VCarb as your constructor, that's probably your fastest path to gaining $2 million in one event. Because where Lawson has the highest potential to gain 2 million as a driver, Hadjar just went down 2 million, so there's value there. So if both of those drivers perform in quali and race, like they've got to show up. VCarb constructors can go up and down 3 million instead of 2 million, and the math favors them a little bit more. So you're more likely to see a $2 million swing on VCarb than I think you are to see a $2 million swing on Stroll or Lawson individually.
And since it is based on fantasy points, they can also be helped if somebody in front of them has a problem.
Yeah.
Or maybe more than one somebody in front of them has a problem, which certainly possibility. We've been talking about Mercedes having some struggles mechanically, and there are 3 Mercedes powered teams in front of them.
I like all the Stroll love in the comment. No, like there's no other place other than this chat and this show that like falls in love with the worst drivers on the grid. Like going back to the Logan Sargent days, like Lance Stroll now. It's just you just love to see it. Like this is such a great community.
Okay, let's get into constructors. We got 20 minutes left. We got 3 tiers. Tier 1, McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes. Ryan?
I didn't do constructor tier names. I keep forgetting to do those, and then I keep saying I'm going to do them. But next F1 show, there will finally be constructor tier names. I'll give the people what they want.
So constructor at the top, you kind of have Ferrari's, let's just call it flat. They went up 500K, but McLaren down 2.1, Mercedes up 2 million. Is this an opportunity? I generally, I don't know if I could tell you why. I very rarely have top constructors on my team. Um, but if it is now an opportunity to grab McLaren at 27.9, let's see what
Not
their
for
average points are.
not for a value gain goal. It's far easier when you're a constructor towards the top of the salary cap table. It's far easier to lose than to gain, just because it's a different math. It's a slightly different math formula for the constructors. I have no problem taking McLaren long as a team if I could afford it on my lineup as well. So there are players in the game now with 140, 145 million in team value. You would not be shocked to see that their roster looking like, Piastri or Norris plus Russell or Verstappen plus McLaren. Like when you've got the money to do that, that's definitely when you make that move. Um, but yeah, I have no problem taking McLaren long. I'm not signing. I'm not signing Ferrari as a team, but I did suggest that if Ferrari is looking like it's going to beat Mercedes handily, then signing Ferrari could make sense. But again, it's 25-5. I'd rather have Hamilton at 22-7 and take a gamble there. And Mercedes has actually done well for me as a constructor. I just benefited from this $2 million increase. I changed around my lineups. I have to check, but I think I was smart enough to, Mercedes is off of my lineups for Austria. So I'm not signing them because we've talked about it ad nauseum about the heat issue, but we will see where that nets out.
I will just point out McLaren has the highest average points of any element on the game currently for the seasons. Have 167, and they're priced at 27.9, which is only 100K more than Max Verstappen, who has 161, and a million less than Oscar Piastri has 164. So I do agree with Michael. The circumstance I would be adding McLaren to my roster right now would be if it's for 5 races, 4 or 5, and if I'm at a point in the season where I'm not as much hunting for value, which I am unfortunately not at that point. I was at that point, and now I'm not.
Or just sign them up until the next sprint race. McLaren's a luxury pick. They're definitely on discount. It's a sale. If you can afford them, they're going to put up a ton of points. They're going to grow a little bit of value. There's obviously a cap on that at 30, as we saw. They were at that for a long time. They were their own tier for, I feel like, the last 3 or 4 races, and now that we're finally discussing them with other constructors. But yeah, they're going to be good, but it's just, can you afford them?
And also only sign them to a 2-race contract. Don't have McLaren through. Don't have $30 million locked up for the sprint race. You want that to go to drivers. So I know I said take me.
Only drivers. Only drivers score points on sprint races.
Yeah.
Constructors don't score points for the sprint, just qualifying and the actual race. Excuse me. Of this tier, McLaren's a discount. I'm not terribly interested in anybody else unless Mercedes looks like they could double podium again, which seems unlikely.
Good question from Ralph Felix says, if Lando wins, can he gain 2 million? I can pretty confidently say no chance.
The answer is no. So I'll tell you,
even
the maximum he can gain is $1.5 million. I did the math actually when I saw the question. So if you go to the scoring table in the game, you'll see that first place in fantasy points is slotted at 33 million, and then what happens is we take the difference from the current value and that slot value and divide by 4. And so the difference from where Norris is now to 33 million, that's like 6.1 million. Divide that by 4, you get $1.5 million. That's the most Norris can go up this week. And it gets very hard to reach that hypothetical ceiling. Unless you're the McLaren constructor and you just double podium everything, then you hit the ceiling until you crash.
And for Norris to be first in fantasy points, the highest likelihood chance of that is qualifying in first position and finishing the race in first position. And ideally, Piastri's not in the top 5. Like that,
Piastri probably has to retire.
Yeah. Like it is, the game is designed that like it is challenging to the game rewards outsized benefits. So when someone lower down the tier performs really, really well, they can get a really, really high fantasy score based on how the scoring system works. Because it'd be really boring if the race winner always was the highest point scorer in the game. So the game is structured a little bit differently for that. But again, for Lando to be fantasy points #1, it is 100% possible, but you're looking at first in quali, first in race, and Piastri. I would have to do the math myself. I think Piastri would have to be out of the top 5. I don't know about DNF.
Well,
DNF definitely.
They can
That also
front
depends on what other people do.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can front row lockout, and then Lando can push Oscar off the track into turn 1. So it's Oscar P20.
Yeah, so it is
Next-
unlikely. That's the long and short of it. It's impossible to gain 2 million. To gain 1.5 million is unlikely.
Next tier, we got Red Bull 21.7, Williams 15.7, VCarb 14.5, Haas 13.3. I'm going to guess we're probably all going to be fairly deep into the VCarb bucket.
VCarb
We
and
can-
Williams.
We can
Yeah.
also justify Williams.
You could also.
I mean, you guys were saying earlier,
Yeah.
Haas is looking like they might be on a tear.
Yeah. I mean, Haas at
If-
13.3 is not a terrible choice, right? Especially that's a post practice pick. Like,
Yes.
yeah.
I think the best of those 3 after practice. I think I think the big question with Haas is, are they actually capable of beating Williams and Racing Bulls when neither of them have problems, which 2 of them had retirements at Canada.
Mhm.
If they can consistently beat those teams, yes, there's some upside there with Haas.
Mhm.
Yeah, my problem with Haas isn't even just Haas. The problem is how much I like VCarb. And they're just over 1 million more. I just feel like it's a much better use of funds, and I think they're going to put up more points. But I would not fault anyone for using Haas. And if you have Haas on your team, I wouldn't pay a drop fee to move up to VCarb.
Mhm.
But if I was rostering a fresh constructor, it'd be VCarb over Haas. And I also just thought it was fun to put these tiers together and have Red Bull in the same tier as Haas, which is just very humorous to me.
Let's have like Red Bull in the same tier as Racing Bulls as well. Like,
Yeah.
which one's the B team? I'm not sure anymore.
I mean, you can't even call Red Bull a team. It's just a driver.
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah.
much.
Funniest league adoption is going to be Red Bull as a constructor. It's pretty much near 0 on every league. It's no one's rostering Red Bull as a team. If you're going to watch the show and then not look at anything F1 until Sunday, Williams or VCarb is your safe bet. If you are obsessed like us and you're going to watch and analyze every practice session, keep an eye out for Haas. But that's a post practice pick.
Yeah, we have a good Sharath question. Drop Williams for VCarb. It's a 400K drop fee, and Tango Down chimes in and says that's his predicament too.
Drop Williams for VCarb.
Yeah.
So
I
pay a
would-
$400,000 fee. It all depends on practice.
Yeah.
At this
It
moment,
depends on
I wouldn't-
practice and I think it also comes down to just how much you're value hunting.
If
Yeah,
they're roughly equal in practice, I'm not dropping Williams. I'm holding Williams. If somehow Racing Bulls look way, way better than Williams, then we could make the move. But it feels unlikely. And then there is also that specter looming of, I don't know about, what's his name? The other driver, not Lawson, Hadjar. I don't know about Hadjar, but like Lawson, there's always that possibility that he loses an engine and has to take another penalty, which is the risk that we're just going to have to live with the rest of the year now.
Yeah, and if for some reason, because it's a 400K fee, you're saving it's 1.2. So if there's something that 800K can go to that really is necessary in your lineup, then yeah, it's probably worth paying the fee.
Mhm.
But at this point, just based on performance and looking at those two teams versus each other in a vacuum, it's probably not worth it unless there's a huge disparity in practice.
Yeah. And just because 2 players brought it up, I'll think about it like this: is that 400K drop fee. Don't think about that coming out of your bank. Think about that coming out of your upside from making this move. So we were saying that VCarb has probably one of the highest likelihood chances, not guaranteed, to go up 2 million. but now you just paid a 400K drop fee. So that maximum upside is probably somewhere around 1.6. Could be a little higher, could be a little lower, about 1.6. Williams probably has 1.3 to 1.8 upside as well. There's a chance there. So like it feels like tomato to me, and like, you know, there might be a little bit more points, there might be a little bit more value, but like I view it as negligible. So it's like a negligible drop fee for probably a negligible exchange of value and points. But that's also, in my opinion, a post-practice pick if you're going to make a move like that.
Yeah, I agree. Any final thoughts on this tier? Should we move on to the next one? We only got 8 minutes left. Let's see. Last tier, we got Aston Martin up 1.5 million at 11.4. Kick Sauber 11.3 million, and then all the way at the bottom we have Alpine at 9.2.
Alpine is probably the play. Alpine or Aston Martin. I still like I can't get my head around Kick Sauber. Maybe I'll just keep missing the boat on that. But if Aston did find something, then they're worth it. Especially because if we like Stroll, that means we like Aston Martin. And then Alpine is just the play for it's cheap. Colapinto's been better than he was earlier. And my nemesis Gasly is part of that as well. So I don't know. I probably don't trust them.
If Stroll could be not last, let's go with Aston, assuming that Alonso is looking like he can finish in the points. Then we'll go Aston. Then my next choice is actually Sauber. So, you know, Alpine, they don't seem to be making a lot of progress, and they're kind of a lame duck on the power unit side. And I also don't trust Colapinto to keep his car in one piece. He did in Canada somehow, but like that's always a question mark.
Yeah, it's hard to have a cheap constructor right now. It is hard to have a cheap constructor, I would say.
And none of them are that cheap.
Yeah, and none of them are that cheap. Exactly. That was the point I was going for. Is it's hard to have a cheap constructor, and none of them are that cheap. You know, I this is a situation where like I would say I'm gonna go Lance Stroll on my lineup to have a driver for 6.1 that's going to have good points to value ratio, and then that gives me enough budget to go up to a Haas, a V-Carb, or a Williams on the constructor side and carry them through. And then, you know, if you have enough team value, carry them through the sprint even, you know, like try and chase long-term value if you believe that long-term value is going to be there.
Yeah, I'm just going to hope that one of these constructors at the bottom really falls off in the next couple races and you get a nice discount for the sprint race when you really want a cheap constructor.
Mm-hmm.
Tango Down wondering, drop Bortoletto for Stroll.
Hell yeah. I'm dropping anyone and everything to get Lance Stroll on the lineup, save a little money. We're committed to the stroller coaster.
That's a viable move. Like unless we have some surprise in practice, like that is a viable move.
There's a lot of downside in Bortoletto right now.
There's a lot of downside in Bortoletto, and the draw with Stroll is like, we all know there's more upside there. Stroll is not the worst driver on the grid in the worst car in the grid. That's why he's always such a temptation down there at the bottom. It's like, if he pulls out a good race, if he has a race where he drives that car to the best of its abilities, he will go up $2 million.
Mm-hmm. Right. And the good news too is there's less downside. Like, think about it. If you have to jump out of a window, do you want to jump out of the first floor window or the 8th floor window? Lance Stroll has a lot. It's not as far for him to fall.
That's true.
Yeah. But Bortoletto is 8.5 million. The salary floor for 20th in fantasy points is 700K. It is far easier for Bortoletto to still finish the race and still lose 1.5 to 2 million dollars, whatever you want to call it. So
yeah, and the drop fee's not, it's not that much.
Yeah.
At the bottom of that tier.
Yeah, and also congrats. You take that drop fee out of the upside that you got from him going up 800K, and that was you won. Totally. Walk away.
This is going to be great for the next show when Lance Stroll finishes P19 and goes down another $500,000. We don't even have to talk about him because we can just cut this part of the show and splice it in next week because we'll all be saying the same thing.
That's true. That is true.
Few minutes left. Want to go through the
Yeah,
$100
I
million
was gonna say we got 4 minutes left. William, let's hear. I think due to time constraints and all of the other stuff that we have been busy with, we do still have to run GridRival, by the way, just to remind everybody. I think William might be the only one with a $100 million lineup this week.
I have nothing better to do but make lineups, apparently. So just to give you a little motivation here, the one that I made for Canada generated 951 points. And if I
Wow.
had chosen the right talent driver, it would have generated over 1,000 points, which is a really competitive score. Just to
For
put that
100
out
million,
there,
for sure.
if you're brand new, you can still score a lot of points with one of these lineups. Here's my lineup. I have Lando Norris. I have Kimi Antonelli. Currently, my talent driver, depending on practice, I might go with one of my other options here. I have Isaac Hadjar. I have Alex Albon. I have Oliver Behrman. And I have Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber.
Yeah, that's a spicy one. I feel like that's
good.
Yeah. I mean, you
Also-
couldn't have done that for 100 million two events ago.
And that's 99.8, the total value of that lineup.
I like
I'm
that.
rapidly approaching the point where I'll probably have to just run Williams' $100 million lineup. I just looked at our league. I lost 7.3 million last in Canada.
You did.
That
I'm
was a
leading the company
disaster.
league, for the record. I'm leading the company league.
That's the worst week I've ever had in 2 years.
And
That is
Oh my god! I
pretty-
just
that's
it's
pretty
so.
rough.
How come no one told me about this? This is horrible.
I felt bad, but I didn't want to rub it in your face. But I won last year, started the season in 5th this year. I have clawed my way back up to 2nd, just going ahead of Ryan now. So I'm right behind William. And
I was in
William-
first like a month and a half ago, and I'm in
Yeah.
last.
and William's a 2-time GridRival employee winner.
2 years out of 3 that I've been here.
Yeah.
Really?
So, yeah.
You got to end that.
I'm gonna look at the NASCAR standings and make myself feel better.
Yeah,
And
you're ahead of
IndyCar.
me in NASCAR.
And Indy. All right. I just need to
That
figure out
too.
the F1 part of things.
Am I not winning our IndyCar
There's a
league
lot more
anymore?
volatility with those other series, and that's a worthy plug, though. We're the official fantasy app of IndyCar. Go play an IndyCar week. There's no race this week. There's a race next week. That's
Yeah,
a fun
may-
series. We've
yeah,
got
maybe-
NASCAR every week till November.
Yeah, maybe if you stink at F1 like I do, you can just focus on the other sports.
And we get it's Atlanta this weekend. We get to just throw darts at the board.
Mhm. Oh, there's one question. Do we have time for one more question, Russ?
Yeah, we have time for one more.
All right. Michael Toaster Boy. I'm not sure why I would value sprint points for one driver, 20 points max versus the 40-point average difference between McLaren and Williams. It's not just from one driver. The
Yeah,
math.
Maybe that difference between McLaren and Williams, that isn't one driver. Maybe that's not the difference between, say, owning Leclerc and owning Piastri. Maybe it's the difference between owning Behrman and Lawson and owning Hadjar and Albon, or Antonelli and Hadjar,
Mhm.
where there's a lot of points to be had. Not to mention that volatility with constructors, which exists.
Yeah, lots of math and forecasting and modeling goes into the game design. So the maths, but the sprint is, we're not fans of the sprint personally as like race fans. So like the sprint is not like an outsized reward because it's not an outsized event. It's not as important as quali or the race. It's an extra advertising venue for the sponsors. So there's a slight advantage for points to go for drivers over constructors for a sprint weekend. But again, the results of that one individual sprint could make that statement not true, depending on what happens in that actual race itself. But we're talking like in general strategy standpoints, the maths that it's a better strategy to go for drivers than constructors for a sprint race.
Yeah, for sure.
You got all the top drivers. Good for you, Michael.
There you go.
That's a good situation.
Yeah.
Probably, unless all of your other drivers are really bad.
Yeah, he's got
You know.
Bortoletto and Colapinto and Stroll.
Sauber, Alpine.
On that note, we're out of time. We're at 1 hour. It is 3 p.m. PST. We thank you guys for joining us. Enjoy the race this weekend, and we will see everybody soon. Thank you again.
Yeah.
And we're done.